So, what if the ultimate luxury, like a week of completely unstructured, schedule-free time on a tropical beach, what if that is actually a recipe for a neurological meltdown?
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge issue.
Right. Today, we're looking at why taking an ADHD brain on vacation often requires, well, another vacation just to recover from it. I mean, think about it. You've been dreaming about this getaway for months, right?
Yeah, the great escape.
Exactly. It's supposed to be your escape from the daily grind. But you get there, and somehow that beautiful, shimmering oasis of free time just turns into this incredibly stressful, exhausting marathon.
It is an incredibly common phenomenon. And what's really fascinating here is that it's not a sign that you pack too many activities into 1 week or, that you're just inherently bad at relaxing.
Which is what people always say.
Right, they do. But for a lot of people, taking a vacation is actually a profound neurological mismatch. It just doesn't fit the way their brain works.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is exactly what our deep dive is about today. We are pulling from some really fascinating medical insights and psychiatric data from places like ADHDspecialist.com and Focus Clinic.
Plus some great practical guides from ADHD Direct and All Clear Travel Insurance.
Yeah, and we've also got these incredibly candid personal accounts from various blogs. Our mission today is to explore what's known as the ADHD holiday paradox. We really want to figure out why unstructured time away from home can physically and mentally drain an ADHD brain, and more importantly, how you can actually engineer a trip that works with neurodivergence.
Instead of fighting it every step of the way, yeah. The core of this paradox really comes down to how different brains process free time.
Okay.
So a neurotypical brain often thrives on spontaneous, structure-free days. Waking up with a totally blank calendar and just seeing where the day takes you is the dream. But for an ADHD brain, the reality is entirely different.
Because they need the structure.
Exactly. They rely heavily on the routines of daily life. The morning alarm, the commute, the school run, regular meal times. Those routines act as an external exoskeleton for a brain that really struggles to generate its own internal structure.
Wow, an exoskeleton. So the daily grind actually holds everything together.
Precisely. When a vacation strips that exoskeleton away, the brain doesn't just relax into the void. Without those external demands to guide behavior, executive dysfunction basically just takes the wheel.
Right. And if the daily routine is the exoskeleton, taking it off starts long before you even leave the house. I mean, before you can struggle to relax on a beach, you have to actually book the beach.
Oh, the booking phase.
Yeah, which brings us to the unique, chaotic nightmare of ADHD travel planning.
The planning phase is really where you see the first major neurological hurdle. And to understand why this is so notoriously difficult, you have to look at how the ADHD brain treats the whole concept of a future event.
That at first, it doesn't look like a struggle at all, right?
No, not at all. It looks like extreme, almost obsessive enthusiasm.
Yes. You sit down to look for a hotel in Italy, and like 6 hours later, you have 27 browser tabs open.
You're practically a local travel agent.
Exactly. You've memorized the local ferry schedule. You've watched 3 deep dive vlogs on where to get the most authentic gelato in Sorrento. And you're literally cross-referencing the thread count of bed sheets at boutique hotels.
And that right there is the research phase.
Yeah.
It provides a massive, immediate dopamine hit. You're discovering new places, new possibilities.
It's just pure novelty.
Right. And an ADHD brain, which typically suffers from a baseline deficit of dopamine, absolutely craves novelty. It is highly stimulating. But, that is just the research.
Yeah.
When it comes time to actually click the button, spend the money, and make the booking, you hit a concrete wall.
Let me push back on this a little, though. I mean, doesn't everyone kind of hate the actual logistics of booking?
Sure, it's not fun for anybody.
Parting with the money, double-checking the exact dates. It's stressful. Why is this specifically an executive function crisis and not just, standard procrastination? Because it sounds to me like the research phase is just a giant dopamine buffet and the actual booking is the heavy bill you don't want to pay.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
Yeah.
The booking is absolutely the bill.
Yeah.
But for the ADHD brain, paying that bill involves a severe internal roadblock tied to something called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD.
RSD, we hear that thrown around a lot, but what is actually happening in the brain there?
So RSD is an intense emotional response. It can literally feel like actual physical pain, triggered by the perception of failure or rejection. When it comes to booking a trip, RSD makes the fear of making the wrong choice completely paralyzing.
Oh, wow. So it's not just like, oh, I hope I pick a good hotel.
No, not at all. The brain internalizes it as, if I book the wrong hotel, I have failed my family, the entire trip is ruined, and it will be entirely my fault.
Oh, man. So it triggers a literal fight or flight response over a hotel reservation.
Exactly. The amygdala just gets completely hijacked. And to avoid that overwhelming potential for failure, the brain's defense mechanism is paralysis. You delay the decision. You close the tabs and say, well, I'll just do it tomorrow.
And that delay comes with a very literal price tag, which brings us to what's widely known as the ADHD tax.
The dread and tax, yes.
Because you hesitate to pay the bill, the flight prices creep up, that perfect hotel sells out, and then panic sets in. And when you finally book in a last-minute panic state, that's when the critical errors slip through.
Yes. And it's crucial to understand those errors aren't signs of carelessness. They are the direct result of an executive function system being pushed past its absolute limit, just forced to operate under intense urgency and stress.
The personal accounts we looked at share some painfully relatable examples of this ADHD tax in action. There's this one blogger who wrote about leaving their kid's iPad at home in the chaotic rush to the airport.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they had to buy a new tablet at an airport electronics kiosk. That's a 170-pound ADHD tax right there. And another traveler got so distracted browsing airport shops that they missed their boarding call entirely.
Wait, really? Just from shopping?
Yeah. They had to book an overnight room and a new flight, which cost 200 pounds. And to top it all off, he bought a bottle of Polish vodka in the duty-free, drank it in the unexpected hotel room, bought a replacement the next day, and then accidentally smashed it when he finally got home.
Oh, that is brutal.
It's just tax on tax on tax.
It's exhausting just hearing about it.
Yeah.
And that exhaustion of dealing with the planning phase leads some people to develop a fascinating coping mechanism,
Right.
which is that they completely overcorrect.
Oh, right, the freestyle trip. I was totally amazed reading about this.
Yeah.
Some people just refuse to plan at all. They book a flight like 48 hours in advance, maybe book the first night's accommodation, and just go.
Right.
They do it to completely bypass the anxiety and RSD of planning.
But of course, you're really just trading the stress of planning for the stress of chaos on the ground.
Yeah, you arrive without an itinerary.
Exactly. Which often means paying premium walk-up rates for everything and waking up every single day having to negotiate with yourself about what to do next.
So, because the ADHD brain subconsciously knows that the planning phase is an absolute minefield, it tries to build workarounds, which brings us to the safety nets.
Right. Both institutional and interpersonal ones.
Let's look at the institutional side first. Travel insurance data highlights something really interesting. It is incredibly crucial for ADHD travelers to declare their condition when getting a policy from places like All Clear.
It really is.
Initially, I thought, why? It's not a broken leg. But when you think about the ADHD tax, it makes perfect sense.
Insurance is fundamentally about mitigating risk, and executive dysfunction introduces highly specific risks into travel. Take time blindness, for example.
Oh, time blindness is huge.
Yeah, it's the literal inability to sense the passing of time. If you have time blindness, you do not feel 45 minutes slipping away while you're looking at magazines in the terminal, which means you miss your departure.
Or if your working memory is depleted, you might just leave your luggage on a train.
Exactly. A specialized policy that accounts for neurodivergence covers those exact scenarios. It also covers medical emergencies, which becomes vital when we talk about medication.
The medication logistics are a massive hurdle on their own. There's a big debate about stockpiling medication versus taking a medication break while on holiday.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
One ADHD coach shared a really candid perspective on this. They pointed out that while taking a break on holiday sounds nice in theory, maybe, to build up a stockpile at home, it comes with a really heavy neurological cost.
It does. Because without medication, the brain's baseline neurochemistry, that dopamine deficit we talked about earlier, it just returns in full force.
Right.
The coach noted that this can lead to feeling incredibly antsy when you're just trying to sit and chat with loved ones. Because the brain lacks the dopamine to regulate emotions, reactions can become much bigger, faster, and way more frequent.
They also mention hyperfocus, which is a classic ADHD trait.
Right. Without medication to help transition between tasks, it becomes nearly impossible to tear yourself away from a highly stimulating activity.
Like the jigsaw puzzle story.
Yes. They used the example of doing a jigsaw puzzle at a family cabin. An unmedicated ADHD brain might lock onto that puzzle and find it physically agonizing to stop, even just to eat or sleep. The transition cost is just too high.
And if you do decide to travel with your medication, it's not as simple as just tossing it into your toiletry bag. A lot of ADHD medications are stimulants.
Which are controlled substances?
Exactly. You often need prescriber letters, copies of your diagnosis, and you absolutely have to check with the destination country's embassy. What is a totally legal daily prescription at home could be a heavily restricted substance abroad.
So that covers the institutional safety nets. But there's another type of safety net that travelers use, and it's often much more fraught. It's the interpersonal safety net.
Oh, this leads to what is called the invisible load.
Exactly.
This one is huge. To avoid the sheer terror, the paralysis, and the potential RSD of booking and planning, the ADHD partner will often unconsciously delegate all the administrative tasks to their neurotypical partner.
Yeah, it becomes you hold the passports, you book the flights, you manage the itinerary.
And while that might look like a practical division of labor on the surface, it often creates immense resentment.
Because the neurotypical partner doesn't necessarily see the invisible internal battle. They don't see the executive dysfunction or the fight-or-flight response that makes these tasks so monumental for the ADHD brain.
Right. To them, it doesn't look like a neurological roadblock. It just looks like a highly capable, intelligent adult completely refusing to help book a simple flight.
Exactly. The neurotypical partner basically becomes the designated executive functioner for two people. It stops feeling like a romantic getaway and starts feeling like a chaperone situation.
The relationship strain begins before the suitcases are even out of the closet.
It really does.
Okay, so let's say you've navigated all of this. The flights are booked correctly, the meds are cleared by the embassy, your relationship is still intact, and you are finally at the destination.
You made it.
You're sitting on a sunbed, the ocean breeze is blowing, everything is objectively perfect. I have to ask, if the brain is exhausted, why can't you just sit by the pool and soak it in?
Because the instruction to just sit back and relax is physically and mentally agonizing for a chronically understimulated brain.
Agonizing.
Yes. Think about what relaxation means to a neurotypical brain. It's a welcome decrease in stimulation, a break from the noise. But the ADHD brain is starving for engagement. When you remove the demands, the deadlines, and the noise of daily life, you aren't providing peace. You're providing a void.
Wow. It's like you've paid thousands of dollars for a sensory deprivation tank, but your brain is screaming for a fireworks show.
That is a perfect way to put it. And because the external environment, the quiet beach, the tranquil pool, isn't providing those fireworks, the brain takes matters into its own hands. It has to generate that stimulation internally.
So if the brain is starved for fuel, but the body is stuck on a quiet beach, something's got to give. I'm guessing this is where people start doing things that look relaxing but are actually obsessive.
Precisely. It often manifests as a desperate, subconscious search for dopamine. A classic example is doom scrolling.
Oh, yeah?
You're in a tropical paradise, but you're spending 4 hours on your phone reading terrible news or getting into arguments in comment sections. It's not because you want to be miserable. Reading stressful news spikes your cortisol and dopamine, creating an artificial sense of urgency and alertness. It's a way to self-medicate the boredom.
Or it manifests as the risky business phase of the holiday. Medical experts actually see this constantly. ADHD travelers seeking extreme novelty in low-stimulation environments.
Yes, the impulsivity.
Going on a massive hike without bringing water, diving into a pool without checking the depth, or simply forgetting sunscreen because the brain is chasing the next shiny thing, resulting in severe sunburns.
Which is very common.
The classic ADHD travel souvenir is coming home with unexplained bruises from some random water sport you impulsively decided to try. Not to mention the financial impulsivity. Booking a wildly expensive jet ski excursion on a whim just to feel something.
That impulsivity is the direct result of a brain trying to jumpstart itself. But what's equally fascinating is the entirely opposite reaction.
Okay.
Instead of wild impulsivity, some ADHD travelers impose incredibly rigid, inflexible routines on the holiday.
Right, like demanding that the family eats at the exact same restaurant at the exact same time every single day, or refusing to deviate from a pre-planned walking route.
Yes.
To a partner, that looks incredibly controlling. You're on vacation. Why are you being a dictator about what time we get lunch?
But again, you have to look at the mechanism. It's not about control. It's a shield. A new environment is full of sensory overload, unfamiliar sights, new smells, and unpredictability.
It's just too much input.
For an ADHD brain that struggles to naturally filter incoming information, that chaos is overwhelming. Imposing a rigid routine is a way to build a temporary exoskeleton to manage the internal chaos. The perfectionism isn't about being bossy. It's a desperate attempt to not feel overwhelmed.
Wow. Okay. So the holiday itself is this constant, exhausting tightrope walk between understimulation and sensory overload. But eventually, the trip has to end, and the journey back triggers a whole new executive function crisis.
The return journey is arguably the most vulnerable point for an ADHD traveler. The dopamine from the novelty of the trip is entirely gone, you're physically fatigued, and your working memory is completely depleted.
Let's talk about working memory for a second, because this leads directly to what is known as the trail of lost property. Why does object permanence completely fail on the way home?
Well, think of working memory like the RAM in a computer. It's the short-term mental workspace you use to hold information right now. Navigating a chaotic, unfamiliar airport with shifting gate changes, luggage, and security protocols takes up almost all of the available RAM in an ADHD brain.
So there is literally no RAM left to remember that you set your passport down on the coffee shop counter.
Exactly. The system crashes. This is why you see people leaving phone chargers plugged into hotel walls, sunglasses on restaurant tables, or the absolute worst-case scenario, leaving a wallet or passport in the airplane seat back pocket.
But the example that perfectly encapsulates this post-holiday system crash is the airport car park challenge.
Oh, the car park.
You've been gone for 2 weeks. You land, you drag your bags out to the massive gray multi-level airport parking garage, and your working memory is just wiped clean.
Nothing there.
You have zero recollection of where you parked. You're wandering around for an hour, clicking your key fob, desperately listening for a faint beep in a sea of 10,000 identical cars.
This is exactly why having strict, non-negotiable habits is vital. For someone with ADHD, taking a photo of the level 3 Bay G12 sign isn't just a quirky travel tip, it is a vital survival tactic. If you don't externalize that memory into your phone, it simply won't be there when you get back.
And the stress doesn't magically evaporate when you finally find the car and get home. We all know the post-holiday blues. But for the ADHD brain, returning home triggers a massive crash.
Because now you have to transition back to the mundane reality of daily life. But that original exoskeleton, the work scaffolding, the routines, the deadlines that kept you functioning, has to be entirely rebuilt from scratch.
Task initiation drops to rock bottom. Unpacking the suitcase can literally take 3 weeks.
Yeah, the suitcase just lives on the bedroom floor.
The return admin, doing laundry, going through the mail, answering emails, it feels like climbing a mountain. The brain is just struggling to boot back up.
The transition periods, both leaving your routine and trying to re-enter it, are always where the executive function demands are the highest.
Okay, we have painted a fairly intimidating picture here. We've gone through the RSD of planning, the ADHD tax, the sensory overload, the lost property, and the re-entry crash. But the brilliant thing about understanding these mechanisms is that it provides a roadmap for fixing them. How can you actually design a trip that recharges an ADHD brain?
It starts with the total reframe of how you view structure. We tend to think of vacation structure as confining. But for the ADHD brain, structure does not restrict freedom. It creates it.
Structure as freedom. Because if you have a framework, you eliminate decision fatigue. You don't have to wake up and negotiate with yourself about what to do, which drains all your executive energy before breakfast.
Exactly. The most effective strategy is building in transition rituals and having just 1 or 2 priority anchor activities a day.
What's an anchor activity?
An anchor activity gives the amorphous day a shape, say a museum tour at 11 a.m. or a dinner reservation at 7 p.m. Once those anchors are set, you have the freedom to be spontaneous in the spaces between them without feeling paralyzed by the infinite possibilities of an entirely blank day.
And the practical tips for the preparation phase are so tactical. To bypass working memory failures, use visual packing lists. Don't just write shirts, use icons or draw it out, which is huge for visual thinkers. And organize with packing cubes and clear zipper bags. If you use clear bags for toiletries and electronics, you don't have to rummage. And airport security doesn't require emptying your entire bag.
Another highly recommended strategy for the planning phase is body doubling.
Oh, I absolutely love body doubling. It sounds mystical, but it's really just having a friend or partner sit in the room with you while you tackle the booking or the packing. They don't even have to help. They can be reading a book, but why does that actually work?
It works because their presence provides a gentle external anchor. It creates a localized social expectation that keeps you tethered to the task. If you start drifting into a 45-minute tangent about Italian ferries, their physical presence reminds your brain of the actual goal, helping push through that analysis paralysis.
That makes total sense. And once you are actually on the trip, the focus has to shift to sensory and emotional management. Bring familiar sensory tools. Noise-canceling headphones are an absolute must for airports or overstimulating cities.
Definitely. And bring a sleep mask to ensure you can actually get restorative sleep in a bright hotel room.
And rely on external cues like alarms. Not just to wake up, but alarms for taking your medication across different time zones and crucial alarms for meals.
Yes. The preventing the hangry meltdown alarm.
One traveler shared a strict relationship rule they use. Absolutely no heavy thinking or decision-making is allowed while hungry or tired. If plans go sideways, which they inevitably will, you do not try to fix the itinerary while you're running on empty.
Which highlights perhaps the most important strategy of all building in grace. When the inevitable hiccup occurs, you have to let the initial frustration, that fight or flight response, pass. You eat something, you take a nap, and only then do you figure out the alternative plan.
I think another fantastic piece of advice is to play to your actual strengths, rather than volunteering to do things you hate or know you'll fail at. If you know your working memory is terrible when stressed, do not force yourself to be the one holding the passports just because you feel guilty. Acknowledge the limitation, communicate it, and divide the responsibilities based on actual capabilities, not societal expectations.
And doing that requires a real level of self-awareness and unmasking. It requires looking at your partner and saying, this is how my brain works, these are my neurological limitations, and here's how we can work around them together. When you do that, you stop fighting your own neurology.
It's about designing a trip for the brain you have, not the brain you think you're supposed to have. If holidays consistently leave you exhausted, it's not a character flaw. It's not a personal failing. It's just a sign that your brain is operating without its usual exoskeleton, and it needs a different kind of support to navigate all that freedom.
Recognizing the underlying mechanisms, the dopamine-driven research, the RSD paralyzing your booking, the need for routine amid sensory chaos, and the working memory failures is the first step. Once you see the pattern, you can build a vacation that genuinely restores you.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought to ponder. If unstructured blank slate downtime is this incredibly taxing for a neurodivergent brain, it makes you wonder, is true relaxation really about doing nothing? Or is it actually about finding the exact right kind of something to be engaged with? Think about that before you book your next beach trip.